Hey guys, tonight we begin with something complex, if not slightly bloody, medieval royalty. This was where crowns came with death sentences, where marriage vows included "till murder do us part," and where half your court was plotting your execution before breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. You wake up not to an alarm clock, but to the sound of servants whispering about whether today will be the day your husband finally decides you've outlived your usefulness. Your bed is silk and velvet, yes, but it might as well be a coffin lined with gold thread because everyone around you, your husband, your court, your own family, is measuring you for one. Their voices soft as prayer, but sharp as the blade they're sharpening for your neck. The morning light filters through stained glass windows that cost more than most people's annual income, casting colourful patterns across stone walls that smell faintly of incense, old tapestries, and the lingering ghost of fear. Your chambers are magnificent, certainly. Tapestries from Flanders depicting biblical scenes where women are either saints or sinners, furniture inlaid with ivory that gleams like teeth in the candlelight, carpets from the Orient soft enough to muffle screams. "Good morning, Your Majesty," your lady-in-waiting whispers, but her eyes don't meet yours, and that's the first sign that today might be your last. Her hands shake slightly as she helps you into a gown that weighs more than a suit of armor. Layers of silk, velvet, and gold thread that serve as both status symbol and straitjacket, each pearl sewn into your sleeves, another reminder that you're valuable property, not a person. You're not just any medieval woman, you're a queen, and in the Middle Ages that doesn't mean power. It means you're the most expensive, most visible, and most disposable political pawn in the kingdom. Think of it like being the star of a reality show where the elimination challenge is literal elimination, and the prize for losing is a very public beheading that will be talked about for centuries. This isn't the fairy tale version of royalty that Disney sold you. There are no singing birds helping you dress, no happily ever after waiting at the end of the story, and definitely no Prince Charming. Your prince is more likely Prince Charmingly psychotic, and your castle isn't a dream home. It's a maximum security prison where the guards are also your potential executioners, their loyalty bought and paid for by whoever offers the best price for your head. Perhaps Your Majesty would prefer the blue gown today, your dresser suggests, and you realize she's not asking about fashion. She's asking whether you want to look regal or repentant when they drag you to the scaffold. The blue silk brings out your eyes, but the black velvet might be more appropriate for a funeral. Yours. Let's start with the brutal mathematics of medieval queenship. You didn't choose this life, you were sold into it, probably around age 12, to seal a political alliance between kingdoms. Your wedding wasn't a celebration of love, it was a business transaction where you were the commodity being traded, your father handing you over like livestock priced by the pound, your new husband accepting you like property that came with a warranty he fully intended to void. Your daily routine isn't about royal duties or charitable works, it's about survival. Every morning you wake up and calculate, who's plotting against me today? Which of my ladies-in-waiting is reporting my conversations to my husband? Has my latest pregnancy bought me another few months of life? Or has my failure to produce a male heir moved me closer to the chopping block that's being polished in the courtyard? The court around you is a nest of vipers in silk gowns and velvet doublets, their smiles sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Everyone bows, everyone calls you Your Majesty, while simultaneously planning your downfall with the efficiency of a well-organized funeral committee. Your husband's mistresses aren't just romantic rivals, they're political threats actively campaigning for your job, your crown, and your continued existence to become optional. The Queen looks pale today, someone murmurs behind a fan decorated with scenes of martyred saints, and you know they're not expressing concern. They're taking inventory, noting whether you seem weak enough to push down the stairs or sick enough to blame your death on natural causes. And the most terrifying part, you can't fight back. You can't divorce your husband, you can't run away, you can't even complain too loudly without being accused of treason against the crown you wear. Your only weapons are charm, cunning, and the desperate hope that you can stay pregnant often enough to remain useful, like a prized breeding mare who's only valuable as long as she produces colts. But the real horror isn't the crown, it's the husband who can legally kill you. And he's waiting for you at breakfast with a smile that could mean affection or assassination, depending on which way the political winds are blowing this morning. You wake to silk sheets that feel like a shroud, and that's not poetic license, it's prophecy. The The morning light filters through stained glass windows that cost more than most people's annual income, casting colourful patterns across stone walls that smell faintly of incense, old tapestries, and the lingering ghost of fear that clings to royal chambers like expensive perfume. Your bed is magnificent, certainly. Carved oak posts that reach toward heaven like prayers, silk curtains embroidered with gold thread that catches the light, mattresses stuffed with down from swans that died for your comfort. But it might as well be a coffin lined with velvet, because everyone around you, your husband, your court, your own family, is measuring you for one. Their voices soft as prayer, but sharp as the blade they're sharpening for your neck. "Good morning, Your Majesty," your lady-in-waiting whispers, but her eyes don't meet yours, and that's the first sign that today might be your last. She moves like someone walking through a graveyard, careful not to disturb the dead, except you're not dead yet, though apparently that's just a technicality everyone's working to correct. Her hands shake slightly as she helps you into a gown that weighs more than a suit of armor, layers of silk, velvet, and gold thread that serve as both status symbol and straitjacket. Each pearl sewn into your sleeves is another reminder that you're valuable property, not a person. The fabric rustles like autumn leaves, beautiful and brittle, ready to fall at the first strong wind. Your chambers are luxurious in the way a gilded cage is luxurious, all beauty and no freedom. Tapestries from Flanders hang on the walls depicting biblical scenes where women are either saints or sinners, with no comfortable middle ground for queens who just want to survive breakfast. The furniture is inlaid with ivory that gleams like teeth in the candlelight, and carpets from the Orient are soft enough to muffle screams, which is probably not a coincidence. "Perhaps Your Majesty would prefer the blue gown today," your dresser suggests, and you realize she's not asking about fashion. She's asking whether you want to look regal or repentant when they drag you to the scaffold. The blue silk brings out your eyes, but the black velvet might be more appropriate for a funeral. Yours. Those beautiful tapestries hide listening holes where spies crouch to record your conversations, their ears pressed against the walls like medieval recording devices. That ornate furniture conceals secret compartments where your letters are copied before being delivered, each word examined for signs of treason, adultery, or dangerous independent thought. Even your prayer book has been examined for hidden messages or signs of heretical thinking, because apparently even talking to God requires government approval. The irony is breathtaking. You live in a palace with hundreds of rooms, but you're more trapped than any prisoner in the dungeon below. At least prisoners know they're captives. Queens have to pretend they're grateful for their golden cage while plotting their survival with every breath, smiling graciously while calculating which servant might poison their morning wine. Your morning routine is a carefully choreographed performance where every gesture is watched, recorded, and reported back to your husband, who uses your daily activities like a weather report to gauge your loyalty. You can't dress yourself. That would be undignified. You can't choose your own breakfast. That might be poisoned by the wrong cook. You can't even pray alone. That might be plotting. The Queen seems troubled today, someone murmurs behind a fan decorated with scenes of martyred saints, and you know they're not expressing concern. They're taking inventory, noting whether you seem weak enough to push down the stairs or sick enough to blame your death on natural causes. The servants who attend you aren't just staff. They're intelligence operatives in corsets, their loyalty bought and paid for by whoever offers the best price for information about the Queen's mood, health, or political leanings. That sweet girl who braids your hair, she's counting how many times you sigh. The woman who brings your morning wine, she's noting whether you drink it all or leave some behind, because refusing food could indicate you know something about poison attempts. Even your windows, those beautiful stained glass masterpieces, are designed to keep you in rather than let light in. They don't open. You can see the world outside, the gardens, the courtyard, the life you're not allowed to participate in, but you can't touch it. It's like being a living portrait, beautiful to look at but trapped in your frame, admired but never free. Speaking of surveillance, let's meet your loving husband, who's probably already planning your funeral while you're still choosing which tiara to wear to breakfast. Like Tinder, but the wrong swipe gets you beheaded. Your husband, the king, isn't just your spouse, he's your judge, jury, and potential executioner, all rolled into one charming package that smiles at you over breakfast while mentally calculating how much your death would improve his political situation. "My dear wife," he says as you enter the dining hall, and you immediately start calculating whether that tone means affection or assassination. His smile could mean he's happy to see you, or it could mean he's already mentally redecorating your chambers for his next wife, the one who's younger, more fertile, and hasn't yet learned to question his decisions. The dining hall itself tells the story of your marriage, a massive oak table that stretches between you like a battlefield, carved chairs that feel more like thrones of judgment than seats of comfort. The walls are lined with portraits of his ancestors, stern-faced men who all seem to be staring at you with the same expression, disappointment mixed with the quiet satisfaction of men who know how to solve their wife problems permanently. Your husband didn't choose you for love, obviously. You were selected like livestock at a market, good bloodline, decent dowry, fertile-looking hips, and a family desperate enough to agree to almost any terms. The marriage contract was negotiated between your fathers like a business deal, which it essentially was. You were the commodity being traded, and your husband was the buyer who could return you for a full refund if you proved defective. I've been thinking about our marriage, he mentions casually, while cutting his meat with a knife that seems unnecessarily sharp, and your blood runs cold because kings don't think about marriages. They end them, usually permanently. You've seen what happened to his previous wives, and let's just say their retirement plans didn't involve growing old gracefully in a countryside cottage. But here's where it gets really fun. Your husband has the legal right to kill you for almost anything. Adultery, death, failure to produce a male heir, death, talking back, death, looking at another man, death, sneezing at the wrong moment during a state dinner, probably also death if he's having a bad day and the court physicians can spin it as a sign of demonic possession. The medieval legal system was basically my house, my rules taken to its logical extreme, except the house is a kingdom and the rules include capital punishment for inconveniencing the landlord. Your husband's word is law, and his law is death, delivered with the efficiency of a man who's had practice at this sort of thing. You look pale today, my dear, he observes, and you wonder if that's concern, or if he's already planning to tell people you died of a mysterious illness. Because that's another option in his arsenal, the convenient, natural death that no one questions because questioning the king's version of events is also treason. Your husband's moods are literally matters of life and death. If he wakes up grumpy, someone's probably going to die before sunset. If he's feeling insecure about his masculinity, he might decide to prove his power by having you publicly humiliated, or worse. If he's been drinking with his advisors and they've been filling his head with paranoid fantasies about your loyalty, well, start writing your will. The most terrifying part is how normal this all seems to everyone around you. Your ladies-in-waiting discuss your husband's temper like they're talking about the weather. Oh, His Majesty seems a bit murdery today. Perhaps we should avoid mentioning the grain shortage. The court physicians keep a supply of widow's weeds in your size, just in case. Even the priests have your funeral mass already written. They just need to fill in the date. The wine is particularly good tonight, your husband says, raising his goblet in what might be a toast, or might be a threat. You raise yours in response, wondering if this is the last wine you'll ever taste, if the next sip will be your last, if the man across the table is toasting your health or your demise. Your husband's power over you isn't just legal, it's divine. The church teaches that he's God's representative on earth, which means defying him is literally a sin against heaven. So when he threatens to have you executed, he's not just exercising royal authority, he's carrying out God's will. It's the ultimate guilt trip with eternal consequences. But before he kills you, you need to produce an heir, which brings us to the next delightful chapter of your royal nightmare. Pregnancy as a survival strategy in a world where your uterus is more valuable than your brain. Pregnant again, the court whispers. She better hope it's a boy. Welcome to medieval motherhood, where your uterus is a political battlefield, and every pregnancy is a roll of the dice with your life as the stakes. In the royal baby-making business, you're not a mother, you're a production facility with a very demanding quality control department and a supervisor who can legally execute you for manufacturing defects. Your primary job as queen isn't to rule, advise, or even look pretty at state dinners. It's to produce male heirs, preferably in rapid succession, without dying in the process or producing anything as disappointing as a daughter. Think of it as the world's most high-stakes assembly line, where the product is future kings and the penalty for quality control failures is your head on a spike. The pressure is immediate and relentless, like a medieval stopwatch ticking toward your execution. From your wedding night onward, every month that passes without a pregnancy announcement is a month closer to your potential replacement. Court physicians examine you like livestock, checking for signs of fertility and reporting back to your husband about your reproductive prospects with the enthusiasm of men discussing crop yields. The queen must be with child within the year, your husband's advisors declare over their morning wine, as if pregnancy is something you can simply will into existence like ordering new tapestries. They speak about your body like it's a piece of agricultural equipment that should be producing crops on schedule. Never mind that medieval medicine has no understanding of ovulation, hormones, or basic reproductive biology. When you do become pregnant, congratulations, you've bought yourself approximately 9 months of relative safety, like a condemned prisoner who's been granted a temporary reprieve. Pregnant queens are valuable property that must be protected, at least until they deliver. You're wrapped in cotton wool, fed the finest foods available, and attended by the best physicians the kingdom can afford, which isn't saying much when the best medical advice involves bloodletting and prayer. Your Majesty glows with divine favour, the court ladies coo, but what they really mean is, Your Majesty has successfully avoided execution for another season. The glow they're seeing isn't divine favour. It's the relief of a woman who's temporarily escaped the chopping block by getting her reproductive system to cooperate with political necessity. But here's the catch that makes this whole system particularly cruel. You better hope it's a boy. Producing a daughter is like delivering a participation trophy to a king who demanded a gold medal. Sure, princesses have their uses. They can be married off to secure alliances, traded like political currency to foreign courts, but they don't solve the succession problem that's keeping your husband awake at night. If you deliver a girl, you're expected to get pregnant again immediately. No rest, no recovery, no time to bond with the child you just risked your life to produce. Just back to the baby-making factory for another round of reproductive roulette, because apparently your body is a slot machine and your husband is convinced the next pull will hit the jackpot. The birth itself is a terrifying ordeal that makes modern childbirth look like a spa day with complementary aromatherapy. There's no anesthesia, no sterile environment, no understanding of infection control. You labour in a room full of women who mean well but have no medical training, attended by midwives whose primary qualification is that they've seen other women give birth and didn't faint. Push, Your Majesty, they shout as if you have any choice in the matter, as if the alternative is to politely ask the baby to wait until more convenient circumstances arise. You're surrounded by ladies-in-waiting who are either praying for your survival or secretly hoping you'll die so they can comfort your grieving husband and position themselves as potential replacements. If you survive the birth and produce a son, you're temporarily golden, like a gambler who's hit the jackpot and bought themselves another round at the table. The kingdom celebrates, your husband is pleased, and you get a brief reprieve from the constant threat of replacement. But don't get too comfortable. Infant mortality is so high that your precious heir could die from any number of diseases, accidents, or mysterious ailments that medieval medicine can't prevent or cure. While you're risking death in childbirth and calculating the political implications of your reproductive success, the court is plotting yours because apparently surviving labor isn't challenging enough. You also need to survive the people who are supposed to be on your side. Smile at breakfast. They're planning your funeral by lunch. The royal court isn't just your workplace. It's a snake pit where everyone wears silk gowns and speaks in honeyed tones while sharpening their knives behind their backs, their smiles sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Welcome to medieval high society, where backstabbing is both literal and metaphorical, and your survival depends on reading between the lines of every curtsy and compliment like you're decoding a death threat written in calligraphy. Your Majesty looks radiant today, Lady Margaret coos as she adjusts your sleeves with fingers that feel like ice, but her eyes are calculating the exact angle needed to push you down the marble stairs. Court life is a performance where everyone's an actor, everyone's an audience, and everyone's writing reviews that could get you killed faster than a bad harvest in a plague year. The great hall where you take your meals stretches before you like a battlefield disguised as a banquet, its vaulted ceilings echoing with the sound of silver against porcelain and whispered conversations that stop the moment you approach. Tapestries depicting biblical scenes of betrayal hang on the walls. Judas kissing Christ, Cain slaying Abel, and you're starting to think the decorator had a sense of humor about your situation. Let's start with your ladies-in-waiting, those charming companions who dress your hair and listen to your secrets with the attention of scholars studying ancient texts. They're not your friends, they're intelligence operatives in corsets, their loyalty bought and paid for by whoever offers the best price for information about the Queen's mood, health, or political leanings. Every word you speak is reported back to interested parties, your husband, his advisors, foreign ambassadors, and anyone willing to pay for information about whether you cried during morning prayers. Perhaps Her Majesty would enjoy a walk in the gardens, suggests the Duke of wherever, his voice smooth as honey poured over poison, and you immediately start calculating whether he's planning to push you into the rose bushes, or simply wants to discuss your replacement in private where the walls don't have ears. Every invitation is a potential trap, every suggestion a possible setup, every friendly gesture a prelude to betrayal wrapped in velvet and tied with silk ribbons. The nobles surrounding you aren't just courtiers, they're competitors in a deadly game of musical chairs where there's only one throne, and everyone wants to be close enough to push you off it when the music stops. They smile, they bow, they compliment your gown, while mentally measuring your neck for a noose, their conversations flowing like wine at a funeral. Sweet on the surface, bitter underneath. Your husband's advisors are particularly dangerous because they have his ear and you don't, whispering into it like serpents in Eden. They speak of your foreign birth as if it were a disease, your failure to produce male heirs quickly enough as if it were treason, your suspicious correspondence with your family as if every letter home were a military dispatch to enemy forces. They paint you as a threat to national security, a drain on the treasury, or simply an inconvenience that needs to be removed for the good of the realm, like a splinter that's become infected. The Queen seems unwell, the court physicians might report with the gravity of men who've discovered the cure for death, and suddenly you're facing accusations of being unfit to rule or even possessed by demons that entered through your foreign prayers. They examine you for signs of pregnancy, but they're also looking for signs of illness, madness, or any medical excuse that could justify your removal from both throne and breathing. Foreign ambassadors add another layer of complexity to this web of intrigue, constantly trying to turn you against your husband or your husband against you, depending on which outcome serves their country's interests, like pieces on a chessboard. Today's ally is tomorrow's enemy, and the ambassador who brings you gifts from his homeland might be the same one funding your assassination with gold hidden in the bottom of jewelry boxes. Even the servants are dangerous, their eyes and ears worth their weight in silver to the right buyer. They see everything, hear everything, and report everything to whoever pays them best, moving through the palace like ghosts with excellent memories. Your chambermaid might be loyal to you, or she might be in the pocket of your husband's mistress, counting your sighs and cataloguing your tears for tonight's intelligence report. The most insidious part is how normal it all seems, like a dance everyone knows the steps to, except you. Court life continues with its elaborate ceremonies, its formal dinners, its musical entertainments where the lute strings sound suspiciously like garrots. Everyone maintains the facade of civilization while plotting your downfall with the efficiency of a well-organized funeral committee. The Queen has such a lovely laugh, someone comments at dinner, and you wonder if they're complimenting your charm or noting how much easier it will be to identify your body when they find it floating in the moat. Every social interaction is a minefield, every conversation a potential confession, every moment of relaxation a chance for someone to strike like a viper in a rose garden. Even your own family will sell you out for the right price, which brings us to the next delightful chapter in your royal nightmare, discovering that blood means absolutely nothing when politics are involved and your father's love has a price tag attached. Your father just signed your death warrant for a trade deal, his signature flowing across the parchment like ink mixed with your childhood memories. If you thought your royal marriage was a business transaction, wait until you see how quickly your own family will throw you under the nearest carriage when it becomes politically convenient, their love conditional as morning mist, and twice as likely to disappear when the sun rises on better opportunities. Let's start with your father, the man who sold you into this marriage in the first place like a prize heifer at market, complete with dowry and breeding guarantees. He didn't give you away out of love for your future happiness. He gave you a way to secure a treaty, gain a military ally, or get his hands on some prime real estate that came with mineral rights and strategic ports. You were the down payment on his political ambitions, and now that the deal is done, you're expendable as last season's fashion. My dear daughter, he writes in his latest letter, the parchment smelling faintly of sealing wax and betrayal. Perhaps it would be best if you were more accommodating to your husband's wishes. Translation: stop causing problems, stop demanding rights, and definitely stop complaining about being murdered slowly by the man who shares your bed. Your father's reputation depends on this marriage working out like a well-oiled siege engine, and if you're the problem, well, he's perfectly willing to solve you permanently. Your mother, if she's still alive and not conveniently dead from a mysterious fever, is even worse than your father's calculated coldness. She spent years training you to be the perfect political pawn, teaching you to smile, curtsy, and never express an opinion that might threaten a man's ego like a sword to his pride. Now she's horrified that you're showing signs of independent thought, as if your brain were a rebellious province that needed to be conquered. A good wife submits, she reminds you in her letters, her handwriting as cold as winter rain, conveniently forgetting that submission in your case might involve submitting to a public execution while she watches from the gallery. She speaks of duty and honor while counting the gold your marriage brought to the family coffers, her maternal love measured in coins and political favors. Your brothers are particularly treacherous because they stand to inherit your father's lands and titles, their futures bright as polished armor, while yours dims like a candle in a storm. Your survival as queen means nothing to them if your death could secure a better alliance for the family business. They'll happily attend your funeral and give touching eulogies about what a devoted sister you were, right after they finish negotiating the terms of your replacement with the enthusiasm of merchants at a spice market. Sister, you must understand the family's position, your eldest brother explains during his visit, his voice carrying the patience of a man explaining mathematics to a child, as if explaining why they're abandoning you to die is just another item on the diplomatic agenda. He speaks about the greater good and political necessity, while you realize that your own blood relatives are actively rooting for your demise like spectators at a gladiator match. Your extended family, uncles, cousins, in-laws who married into this web of ambition, they're all playing the same game with the dedication of chess masters. They calculate the benefits of supporting you versus the benefits of supporting your replacement. And guess what? You're losing that calculation faster than a ship with holes in its hull. Your cousin might inherit your jewelry, your uncle might get a better trade agreement, your sister-in-law might finally get the social position she's always wanted like a vulture eyeing a dying deer. The most heartbreaking part is how casually they discuss it, their voices carrying the same tone they'd use to discuss crop rotations or the weather. Your family doesn't gather in dark corners plotting your murder like villains in a morality play. They discuss your potential demise over dinner, weighing the pros and cons like they're deciding whether to plant wheat or barley next season, their calculations cold as winter stone. If Catherine were to have an accident, they muse while carving their roasted fowl. The new marriage alliance could be quite beneficial for expanding our trade routes. They speak of your death like it's a business opportunity, their voices warm with wine and cold with calculation. Your own relatives start treating you like a stranger at family gatherings, their smiles polite but distant, already practicing for the day when you're no longer around to complicate their plans like an unwanted guest who's overstayed their welcome. They stop including you in family decisions, stop asking for your opinions, stop treating you like a person and start treating you like a problem that needs to be solved with the efficiency of a well-run household. But the real danger comes from your husband's wandering eye, because apparently surviving your own family's betrayal isn't challenging enough. You also need to compete with women who are actively trying to replace you in your own bed while you're still breathing in it. Medieval reality TV. The Bachelor, but losers get executed and the roses come with thorns dipped in poison. Your husband's affairs aren't just personal betrayals. They're political weapons aimed directly at your throat with the precision of a master archer. In the royal marriage game, mistresses aren't just romantic rivals. They're potential replacements actively campaigning for your job, your crown, and your continued existence to become optional as a summer cloak in winter. His Majesty seems quite taken with Lady Anne. Your lady-in-waiting mentions casually while brushing your hair with strokes that feel like counting down to your execution, and your blood runs cold because you know exactly what that means. It means your husband has found someone younger, prettier, more fertile, or simply more politically useful than you. Someone whose family offers better trade agreements or military alliances than your increasingly distant relatives. The Great Hall during evening meals becomes a theatre of subtle warfare, where every glance between your husband and his latest favourite is a dagger thrust at your legitimacy. You watch from your throne as he leans close to whisper in her ear, his hand lingering on hers like a promise of promotion, while you smile graciously and calculate how many days you have left before she starts wearing your jewellery. Let's be clear about how this works. Your husband can't just trade you in for a newer model like a worn-out horse, though he'd probably prefer that option. You're not just his wife. You're a political alliance, a treaty made flesh, a living contract between kingdoms written in wedding vows and sealed with dowry gold. But that doesn't mean he can't find creative ways to make you disappear so he can marry someone else, his imagination limited only by his cruelty and his advisor's legal knowledge. The mistresses know this game better than you do, and the smart ones aren't just trying to win your husband's heart. They're trying to win your husband's throne through strategic positioning and political maneuvering. They're not content to be kept women in the shadows like expensive pets. They want to be queens in the sunlight, wearing your crown and sleeping in your bed while you rot in an unmarked grave. She's so young and vibrant, people whisper about the latest favourite, their voices carrying the enthusiasm of courtiers betting on horse races, and you know they're not just commenting on her appearance, they're commenting on her potential as your replacement. Every compliment directed at her is an implicit criticism of you. Every moment she spends in your husband's company, a moment she's building her case for why she should be queen instead of you. Lady Anne moves through the court like a swan on a lake, graceful and serene on the surface while paddling furiously underneath, her family pushing her interests with the dedication of merchants hawking their finest wares. She wears gowns that complement yours but somehow look fresher, speaks in a voice that carries just far enough to be heard but not so far as to seem improper, and smiles at your husband with the kind of adoration that makes you want to check your wine for poison. The really dangerous mistresses are the ones who get pregnant, their swelling bellies like siege engines aimed at your position. A royal bastard might not be able to inherit the throne, but a pregnant mistress represents possibility, fertility, and the promise of legitimate heirs if she were to become a legitimate wife through the convenient death of the current queen. Suddenly your husband starts looking at you like you're an obstacle to his dynasty, rather than a partner in it. Perhaps your Majesty would enjoy retiring to a convent, suggests the mistress's father, with the smooth confidence of a man who's already measured the abbess's chambers for his daughter's furniture, as if voluntary exile is a reasonable career change for a queen. These families don't just want their daughters to be royal mistresses, they want them to be royal wives, which means they need you to vacate the position permanently, preferably with a minimum of fuss and a maximum of speed. The psychological warfare is constant and sophisticated, like a siege conducted with silk gloves and poisoned smiles. The mistresses don't just try to seduce your husband away from you. They try to drive you insane with jealousy, paranoia, and despair until you do something desperate enough to justify your execution. They wear your favorite colors to court events. They adopt your mannerisms like actresses studying a role. They even start styling their hair like yours as if practicing to be your understudy. Your husband, meanwhile, plays all sides with the skill of a master musician, enjoying the attention, the competition, the power of having multiple women fighting for his favor, like gladiators in an arena. He might even encourage the rivalry, because it keeps everyone focused on pleasing him, rather than questioning his authority, his ego fed by the spectacle of beautiful women destroying each other for his amusement. When charm fails and mistresses start gaining too much influence, there's always the classic solution: direct elimination through creative means that maintain plausible deniability while removing inconvenient queens from the political equation. That maid brushing your hair, she's taking notes. Welcome to medieval royal life, where every servant is a potential spy, every conversation is potentially recorded, and your most intimate moments might be tomorrow's court gossip filed away in someone's mental ledger. In your Golden Palace prison, privacy isn't just rare, it's literally impossible because everyone around you is on someone else's payroll, their loyalty measured in silver coins and political favors. Your ladies-in-waiting aren't just there to help you dress and look pretty at state functions, their hands gentle as they arrange your sleeves, but their minds sharp as accounting ledgers. They're intelligence operatives in silk gowns, trained to notice everything: what you eat, how much you sleep, who you talk to, what books you read, and most importantly, any signs that you might be plotting against your husband or questioning his divine authority. Your Majesty seems troubled today, your favorite lady-in-waiting observes while arranging your jewelry with the precision of someone cataloguing evidence. But what she's really doing is filing your emotional state for her evening report to whoever pays her best. Did the Queen seem anxious? Was she eating normally? Did she receive any letters? Every detail is valuable intelligence in the medieval court's endless game of political chess, where information is currency and secrets are weapons. The servants who bring your meals aren't just delivering food, they're conducting surveillance with the dedication of monks copying manuscripts. They note what you finish, what you leave behind, whether you seem to have an appetite for both food and life. Loss of appetite could indicate pregnancy, illness, or depression, all of which have political implications that could shift the balance of power faster than a castle siege. They also watch for signs that you might be trying to poison yourself or someone else, because royal suicide and assassination attempts are always possibilities in a world where death is often preferable to disgrace. Your wine cup is examined, your leftover bread is scrutinized, even your chamber pot is inspected for signs of your health and potential pregnancy, like a medieval medical report written in waste. Your chambermaid, the woman who cleans your room and handles your most personal belongings with the intimacy of a confessor, has access to everything that matters. She reads your letters before you do, searches through your jewelry for hidden messages, and reports on your sleeping patterns with the thoroughness of a court physician. Insomnia might mean you're plotting. Sleeping too much could indicate illness or pregnancy, or the kind of despair that leads to convenient accidents. The guards outside your door aren't protecting you. They're monitoring you like wardens watching a particularly valuable prisoner. They note who visits, how long they stay, and what mood everyone seems to be in when they leave. They listen at doors with ears trained to catch whispers, peek through keyholes with eyes that miss nothing, and report any unusual sounds or conversations to whoever signs their pay vouchers. Even your confessor, the priest who's supposed to offer spiritual guidance and absolute confidentiality, might be reporting your sins and concerns to interested parties who find your soul less interesting than your secrets. The sanctity of confession is supposed to be absolute, but when politics and survival are involved, even holy men can be compromised by gold or threats. Your spiritual struggles become political intelligence. Your prayers become evidence of your loyalty or lack thereof. The really insidious part is that you can't trust anyone completely, but you also can't function without servants in a world where dressing yourself would be considered undignified and potentially treasonous. You need help bathing, eating, managing the complex rituals of court life that require more hands than you possess. But every person who helps you is also potentially betraying you with the casual efficiency of someone discussing the weather. Your correspondence is particularly vulnerable. Each letter a potential death warrant written in your own hand. Letters are opened, read, copied, and sometimes altered before reaching you like a medieval game of telephone played with your life. Your responses are similarly scrutinized by people who can read between lines better than scholars reading ancient texts. Writing to your family becomes an exercise in coded language and diplomatic doublespeak, where even innocent messages about the weather or your health can be interpreted as political statements or secret communications. The servants also create a complex web of loyalties and rivalries among themselves, their allegiances shifting like sand in an hourglass. They compete for your favor, but they also compete for the favor of other powerful people who might outlast you. A maid who falls out of favor with you might seek protection by offering particularly juicy intelligence to your enemies, her betrayal dressed up as professional necessity. The household staff becomes a miniature court with its own politics and betrayals, where the cook might be reporting to your husband's advisors while the stable boy is in the pocket of foreign ambassadors. Everyone is watching everyone else, creating a surveillance network so complex that even the spies need spies to keep track of who's betraying whom. Even your food isn't safe from political manipulation, and your next meal might be your last if the wrong person decides you've outlived your usefulness. That wine tastes funny, but it's too late now. In the medieval royal dining experience, every meal is a potential assassination attempt, every cup of wine a possible death sentence, and every bite of food a gamble with your life where the house always wins and you're playing with borrowed time. Welcome to royal cuisine, where the seasoning might include arsenic and the chef might be working for your enemies with the dedication of a master craftsman perfecting his art. Poison is the weapon of choice for royal assassinations because it's subtle, deniable, and can be made to look like natural illness with the right timing and dosage. Unlike a sword through the chest or an arrow to the back, poison allows killers to maintain plausible deniability while attending your funeral with appropriately grief-stricken expressions. Oh, how tragic that the Queen died of a sudden fever. These things happen, especially to inconvenient wives. Your food taster, that poor soul whose job is to eat everything before you do, is your first line of defense and a walking reminder that someone is actively trying to kill you with every meal. He takes a bite of your bread, a sip of your wine, a spoonful of your soup, and then you wait with the patience of someone watching an hourglass measure their remaining lifespan. How long? Long enough to see if he starts convulsing, vomiting, or simply dropping dead at your feet like a canary in a coal mine. But here's the problem that makes this system particularly cruel. Not all poisons work immediately like lightning striking a tower. Some take hours or even days to show symptoms, their effects creeping through the body like fog rolling over a battlefield. Others are designed to mimic natural illnesses. A slow-acting poison that causes fever and wasting could easily be mistaken for plague or consumption, allowing your murderer to express sympathy while planning your funeral. Your food taster might sample your dinner and seem fine, only to die mysteriously 3 days later while you're already suffering from the same poison, your body fighting a battle you don't even know you're losing. It's like playing chess against an opponent who's already planned your defeat 10 moves ahead. The kitchen becomes a battlefield of competing loyalties, where every pot and pan is a potential weapon in the wrong hands. Your head cook might be loyal to you, but what about the scullery maid who adds the salt with hands that shake slightly? The servant who brings water from the well with eyes that won't meet yours? The stable boy who delivers fresh herbs with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes? Any one of them could be bought, threatened, or coerced into adding something extra to your meal. The soup is particularly flavorful today, Your Majesty, your cook announces, with what might be pride in his voice or nervousness because he knows what's swimming in the broth, but you're already calculating the odds like a gambler at a rigged table. Is that genuine enthusiasm, or is he nervous because he knows what's in it? You smile, compliment the seasoning, and take a small spoonful while mentally preparing for the possibility that this might be your last meal. Even the serving vessels become suspect in this game of culinary Russian roulette. Certain metals were believed to change color in the presence of poison, so wealthy royals often ate from silver or gold plates that gleamed like armor against invisible enemies. But clever assassins learned to work around this, using poisons that didn't react with metals or finding ways to contaminate food after it was plated, their knowledge of chemistry rivaling that of alchemists. The paranoia extends beyond just the food itself, like ripples in a poisoned pond. Who had access to the kitchen? Who delivered the ingredients? Was the wine properly sealed? Has anyone been in your private dining chamber? You start to see potential murderers everywhere. In the servant who refills your water pitcher with hands that linger too long, the guard who stands by the door with eyes that watch too carefully, even the priest who blesses your meal with words that sound more like last rites. Your eating habits become a complex ritual of survival, each meal a ceremony designed to cheat death for another day. You vary your meal times, change your seating arrangements, and sometimes refuse to eat anything that wasn't prepared in your sight by people whose families you know personally. But this level of paranoia is exhausting and ultimately futile because if someone really wants to poison you, they'll find a way to do it with the patience of a spider waiting for a fly. If poison doesn't work and your enemies need more direct methods, there are always the classic solutions that have been solving royal problems for centuries with the efficiency of a well-run business. Like customer service, but the complaint department uses axes. When subtlety fails and poison proves too slow for impatient enemies, medieval kings had a variety of direct solutions for their queen problems, each method carefully chosen to send the right message to the right audience. Welcome to the Royal Execution menu, where the methods are creative, the audiences are enthusiastic, and the customer satisfaction rate is 100% fatal. Let's start with the classic. Beheading, the premium option for disposing of inconvenient royalty. It's quick, it's dramatic, and it sends a clear message to anyone else who might be thinking about inconveniencing the king with their continued existence. For queens, beheading was considered almost merciful, a recognition of their royal status that spared them the more gruesome fates reserved for common criminals who couldn't afford better deaths. The executioner used a sharp axe or sword aimed for the neck with the precision of a master craftsman and hopefully got it right on the first try because second attempts were embarrassing for everyone involved. The scaffold was built high enough that everyone in the crowd could see the proceedings, turning your death into a public theatre performance where you were both the star and the finale. "Any last words, Your Majesty?" the executioner asks with the professional courtesy of someone who's done this before, and you realize this is your final performance, your last chance to control the narrative that will outlive your body. Some queens used this moment for defiant speeches that would be quoted for centuries, others for religious proclamations that painted them as martyrs, and a few for spectacular curses that would haunt their executioners for years to come. But beheading wasn't always as clean as it sounds in the history books. Because executioners were human, axes were heavy, and necks were surprisingly resilient pieces of anatomy. A nervous or inexperienced executioner might need multiple swings, turning what should be a quick death into a prolonged horror show that traumatized spectators and gave your enemies more satisfaction than they deserved. Then there's hanging, though this was typically reserved for queens of lower birth, or those accused of particularly heinous crimes that required more theatrical punishment. Hanging was considered undignified for royalty, but desperate kings sometimes made exceptions when they wanted to emphasize the severity of your crimes. The process was slow, public, and designed to be humiliating in ways that beheading wasn't. You'd be dragged through the streets on a cart, displayed on a platform like merchandise at a market, and left to strangle slowly while crowds jeered and threw things with the enthusiasm of people attending a particularly violent sporting event. It was death as entertainment, your final moments choreographed for maximum public impact. For queens accused of witchcraft or heresy, burning was the preferred method because it wasn't just execution, it was purification, a way to cleanse the realm of evil influence while providing a spectacular light show. You'd be tied to a stake, surrounded by wood and kindling arranged with the care of someone building a bonfire, and set ablaze while priests chanted prayers for your soul and your enemies watched with satisfaction. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same church that crowned you queen would now be blessing your immolation, their holy water and sacred words accompanying your transformation from royal problem to royal ash. The smoke was supposed to carry your sins away, though mostly it just carried the smell of burning flesh that would linger in people's memories. Some kings preferred more creative approaches that reflected their particular style of problem-solving. Drowning was popular for queens accused of adultery, a symbolic cleansing that played well with religious audiences who appreciated the biblical imagery. You'd be weighted down and thrown into a river or lake, sometimes in a sack, sometimes just with stones tied to your feet while people watched from the banks. The water would judge your guilt or innocence according to medieval logic, and spoiler alert, the water always found you guilty because innocent people don't get thrown into rivers by their husbands. It was trial by ordeal with a predetermined outcome, justice theatre performed for an audience that already knew the ending. The trial that preceded your execution was usually a formality designed to provide legal cover for political murder. The verdict was predetermined, the evidence was manufactured, and the witnesses were either bought or terrified into compliance by people who understood the value of cooperative testimony. The church might save you, or it might condemn you, depending on which way the political winds are blowing and how much your husband has donated to the cathedral building fund recently. The priest declares you a witch, your husband nods approvingly, and somewhere in the back of your mind you wonder if this is how all marriages end, with accusations of demonic possession and a conveniently timed religious revelation. Welcome to medieval religious justice, where divine will and political convenience dance together like drunk wedding guests at a very dangerous reception, their steps perfectly choreographed to eliminate inconvenient queens while maintaining the fiction of moral righteousness. The Queen has been seen reading books, the bishop announces gravely, his voice carrying the weight of someone who's discovered evidence of the apocalypse, as if literacy were a symptom of demonic possession rather than basic education. In medieval Europe, educated women were inherently suspicious, their minds viewed as fertile ground for dangerous ideas that might threaten the natural order of male dominance and divine authority. The great hall where your trial takes place smells like incense, fear, and the lingering ghost of other women who've stood where you're standing now, their fates sealed by the same combination of political necessity and religious theatre. Tapestries depicting biblical scenes of judgment hang on the walls. Daniel in the lion's den, the woman taken in adultery, Jezebel being thrown from her window. And you're starting to think the decorator had a very specific message in mind about your situation. If you could read, you might be reading the wrong things. Books that question church doctrine or suggest that women might have souls worth considering. If you question church doctrine, you might be spreading dangerous ideas like the radical notion that queens shouldn't be executed for political convenience. If you showed any signs of independent thought, you were clearly in league with Satan himself, because everyone knows that thinking is a masculine activity. The beauty of religious persecution is its flexibility, like a legal system designed by people who've never met a fact they couldn't twist into evidence of spiritual corruption. Almost anything can be reframed as proof of your guilt. Do you have a pet cat? Familiar spirit? Do you know herbal remedies? Witchcraft? Do you speak multiple languages? Suspicious foreign influence that probably involves communicating with demons in their native tongues. Your foreign birth makes you particularly vulnerable to religious accusations, your childhood prayers in German becoming evidence of heretical thinking rather than simple linguistic preference. She prays differently, the court whispers, noting that your Ave Marias have a distinctly non-English accent. She questions our customs, they observe when you suggest that maybe burning people alive isn't what Jesus had in mind when he preached about love and forgiveness. Every cultural difference becomes evidence of spiritual corruption. Every suggestion for reform, proof of heretical thinking that threatens the very foundations of Christian society. The fact that you were raised in a different country isn't just biographical detail. It's evidence that you're fundamentally alien, possibly demonic, and certainly dangerous to the spiritual health of the realm. The Church's involvement in your persecution isn't incidental, it's essential, providing the moral framework that transforms political assassination into holy duty. Religious authorities don't just support your destruction, they orchestrate it with the efficiency of people who've done this before and perfected the process through years of practice. When the bishop declares that God has revealed your guilt in a vision, who can argue with divine revelation? When the priest explains that your execution is necessary to save the kingdom's soul, your murder becomes a sacrament, a holy act that cleanses the realm of evil influence while conveniently solving your husband's political problems. Perhaps the Queen consorts with demons, suggests the court theologian, a man whose primary qualification is his ability to find Satan in a bowl of porridge, and whose theological training consists mainly of reading other people's accusations of witchcraft. The evidence? You were seen walking alone in the garden at twilight, clearly communing with evil spirits, rather than simply getting some fresh air and trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere of court intrigue. The trial process is a masterpiece of predetermined outcomes, where witnesses are found, like actors auditioning for a play where everyone already knows the ending. Servants swear they've seen you levitating. Guards claim you spoke to ravens in what sounded suspiciously like Latin. Ladies in waiting insist your prayers sounded foreign and therefore heretical. The fact that these witnesses are being paid, threatened, or promised better positions after your convenient death is irrelevant to the proceedings. Truth is whatever serves the greater good, and the greater good is whatever your husband wants. Blessed by religious authorities who understand that supporting the king's decisions is the path to continued influence and generous donations to cathedral building funds. Your children won't save you. They might inherit your throne, but they'll also inherit the political necessity of distancing themselves from their heretical mother, who consorted with demons and threatened the spiritual purity of the realm. Your son just asked when he'll be king, and that innocent question from your 8-year-old heir isn't just childhood curiosity. It's a political earthquake that shifts the entire landscape of your survival, like tectonic plates rearranging themselves beneath your feet. In the medieval monarchy game, children aren't just your legacy, they're your replacement parts, and the moment they're old enough to rule is the moment you become expendable as last season's fashion. Let's start with the brutal mathematics of royal succession, where your primary value as queen is producing male heirs, but once those heirs exist and reach a certain age, your usefulness expires like milk left in the sun. A king doesn't need a queen to rule, he needs one to produce rulers, and once the production line is complete, the factory can be shut down permanently with no loss of efficiency. The prince is old enough to understand statecraft, your husband's advisors murmur over their wine, their voices carrying the satisfaction of men who've solved a complex problem, and you know exactly what they mean. They're not praising your son's intelligence, they're calculating his political utility like merchants are praising livestock at market. A young king needs a regent, and regents have power that can be wielded more easily than dealing with a queen who has her own opinions about governance, foreign policy, and whether executing people for minor infractions is really necessary. Your husband can rule through your son more efficiently than he can rule with you questioning his decisions and demanding your own political voice in matters of state. Your children are being groomed not just for kingship, but for your replacement, their tutors filling their heads with stories of strong kings who ruled without interference from meddling wives. They learn that queens are temporary fixtures, that royal mothers are political conveniences, that family loyalty comes second to political necessity, and the smooth functioning of the realm. Your son's education becomes a careful balance between preparing him for power and preparing him for life without you. His lessons including subtle instruction in why queens sometimes need to be removed for the good of the kingdom. Your daughter learns that royal women are valuable only as marriage assets and breeding stock, their worth measured in dowries and alliance potential rather than intelligence or character. The really twisted part is how your maternal love is weaponized against you, like a sword forged from your own affection. Every moment you spend with your children is monitored for signs of undue influence, as if loving your own offspring were a character flaw that threatens the natural order of royal succession. Are you teaching them to question their father's authority? Are you filling their heads with dangerous ideas about royal power being shared rather than absolute? Are you creating emotional bonds that might interfere with their political loyalties when the time comes to choose between their mother and their crown? The Queen spends too much time with the princes, the court observers note, their voices carrying the disapproval of people who think maternal affection is a political liability, as if loving your own children were evidence of unfitness for royal duty. Your natural desire to protect and nurture your offspring is reframed as political manipulation, your attempts to prepare them for the harsh realities of royal life seen as attempts to turn them against their father. Your son, meanwhile, is caught in an impossible position that would challenge the wisdom of Solomon himself. He loves you, but he's being taught that loving you is weakness that could compromise his ability to rule effectively. He wants to protect you, but he's learning that protecting you is treason against the crown he's destined to inherit. He's just a child, but he's already being forced to choose between his mother and his crown, between family loyalty and political survival. And everyone knows which choice he'll eventually make, because kings don't become kings by choosing love over power, sentiment over statecraft, or maternal bonds over political necessity. The succession laws work against you in every possible way. Their logic designed by men who understood that queens are inherently temporary, while kingdoms must be eternal. If your son dies, your husband can remarry and produce new heirs with a younger, more fertile wife. If you die, your son still inherits, and your husband gains a convenient excuse to find a replacement who won't question his authority or demand political influence. You're the only one in this equation who becomes less valuable over time, while everyone else's political stock rises like bread in a warm oven. Your children face their own cruel calculations, their value measured not in love but in political utility, their futures dependent on learning to navigate a world where family bonds are luxuries that few can afford. Even foreign allies will abandon you when convenient because supporting a doomed queen is bad diplomacy, and everyone can see which way the political winds are blowing when children start asking about inheritance, like international diplomacy, but with more stabbing and significantly less honor among thieves. Your marriage wasn't just a union between two people. It was a treaty between kingdoms, a political alliance sealed with vows and consummated with the hope of mutual benefit that would last longer than the average medieval lifespan. But in the medieval world of shifting loyalties and opportunistic alliances, today's ally is tomorrow's enemy, and your foreign supporters are about to discover that backing a losing queen is a luxury they can't afford in the current political climate. The French ambassador sends his regrets, your secretary announces, reading from a letter that might as well be your political obituary written in diplomatic ink, the parchment smelling faintly of sealing wax and betrayal. The regrets aren't about missing a dinner party. They're about abandoning you to your fate like passengers fleeing a sinking ship while the orchestra plays on. The same French court that celebrated your marriage with elaborate festivities, that sent gifts for your coronation, wrapped in silk and sealed with promises of eternal friendship, that pledged mutual support between your kingdoms through thick and thin, has suddenly developed a case of diplomatic amnesia so severe they can barely remember your name. Your birth family, those German relatives who were so proud when you married into royalty and couldn't stop bragging about their connection to foreign power, are now treating you like a distant cousin they barely remember meeting at a wedding years ago. The letters from home become increasingly formal, increasingly cold, their tone shifting from familial warmth to diplomatic distance. Where once your father wrote with genuine affection and family news, sharing stories about your childhood home and asking about your health with paternal concern, now he writes like a diplomat conducting business with a minor trading partner. He carefully avoids any statement that could be construed as support for you personally, rather than for the political alliance you represent, his words measured and cautious. Perhaps it would be best if the Queen were to retire from public life, suggests the Venetian ambassador, using the kind of diplomatic language that sounds polite but means please die quietly so we don't have to choose sides in this increasingly awkward situation. Venice has trade agreements with your husband's kingdom that are far more valuable than sentimental loyalty to a doomed queen. Supporting you means opposing a potentially lucrative political arrangement that could open new markets and trade routes. Supporting your husband means access to Russian grain, English wool and French wine, plus the promise of favorable treatment in future negotiations. The choice is obvious to anyone who understands that diplomacy is business conducted by other means. The Holy Roman Emperor, who once courted your family's support with elaborate gifts and flowery letters, now finds your existence inconvenient, like a piece of furniture that no longer matches the decor. Your husband has been making overtures about a new alliance, possibly involving a new marriage to the emperor's niece, a fresh young princess who comes with better dowry terms and fewer political complications. Your own country's ambassador starts avoiding you at court functions, like you're carrying a contagious disease that might spread to his career prospects. When you do manage to corner him in a hallway, he speaks in the careful, measured tones of a man who's received very specific instructions from home about maintaining diplomatic distance. Your Majesty must understand the delicate nature of international relations, he explains, his voice carrying the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a child, which translates to, "You're on your own, and we're pretending we never knew you existed." The marriage alliances that once seemed so solid begin to crumble like ancient parchment exposed to sunlight. Your sister, married to a duke in a neighboring kingdom, as part of the same diplomatic web that brought you to power, suddenly stops writing letters that once arrived weekly, filled with family gossip and sisterly affection. Your cousin, wed to a French count in another strategic marriage, sends polite but distant holiday greetings that read like form letters composed by diplomatic secretaries. The network of family connections that was supposed to protect you like a safety net is dissolving as everyone calculates the cost of association with a queen whose star is falling faster than a stone dropped from a castle tower. Foreign courts begin hedging their bets by cultivating relationships with your potential replacement. Their ambassadors suddenly very interested in your husband's mistresses and their family's political connections. Your husband's latest favorite starts receiving gifts from foreign ambassadors, invitations to private dinners where trade agreements are discussed, and hints about future recognition should circumstances change. The same diplomats who once competed for your attention are now competing for the attention of women who might soon wear your crown and sign treaties in your place. Your ladies-in-waiting aren't just servants, they're potential assassins, and the court is about to become even more dangerous as the women closest to you reveal their true loyalties and the price of their continued service. They dress your hair while planning your downfall, their fingers gentle as they arrange your sleeves, but their minds sharp as accounting ledgers, recording every sigh, every glance, every moment of weakness that might be useful to someone willing to pay for information. If you thought your husband and his mistresses were dangerous, wait until you meet your ladies-in-waiting. Those charming companions who help you dress, listen to your secrets, and spend their evenings writing detailed reports about your every word and gesture like medieval intelligence operatives in corsets. Welcome to medieval girl squad dynamics, where sisterhood is a myth, and every friendship comes with a hidden agenda written in invisible ink and sealed with betrayal. Your ladies-in-waiting aren't just servants, they're carefully selected intelligence operatives in silk gowns, their loyalty bought and paid for by whoever offers the best price for information about the Queen's mood, health, or political leanings. Your Majesty's hair looks lovely today, Lady Margaret coos while braiding ribbons through your locks with the precision of someone who's memorizing every conversation, every visitor, every sign of weakness for tonight's report to her father, who happens to be one of your husband's closest advisors and most trusted conspirators. She's not just styling your hair, she's cataloguing your emotional state like a physician taking notes on a dying patient. The great hall where you take your meals has become a theatre of subtle warfare, where every glance between you and your ladies is measured, weighed, and reported back to interested parties who collect information like merchants collecting coins. Each one comes from a noble family with their own political interests, their own ambitions, and their own reasons for wanting access to the Queen's private chambers where secrets are shared and weaknesses revealed. The hierarchy among your ladies is vicious and constantly shifting like sand in an hourglass, their allegiances changing with the political winds. The chief lady-in-waiting, usually from the most powerful family, acts as your keeper more than your companion, controlling access to you like a gatekeeper at a fortress, deciding which letters you see first, and determining who gets to whisper in your ear during state functions. Below her, the other ladies compete for favor, information, and the chance to be the first to report your mistakes to interested parties who pay well for fresh intelligence. They know everything about you, your menstrual cycle, your eating habits, your sleeping patterns, your fears, your hopes, your private conversations with your children that should remain private but never do. Every intimate detail of your life becomes political intelligence filed away in their mental ledgers. When you're late for your monthly courses, they're calculating whether you might be pregnant and what that means for the succession. When you refuse breakfast, they're noting whether you seem ill, depressed, or possibly trying to poison yourself to escape this golden prison. The really dangerous ones are the ones who seem most loyal, their smiles warm as summer sunshine, but their hearts cold as winter stone. Lady Anne, who always agrees with you, who comforts you when you cry, who seems genuinely concerned about your welfare. She's often the most effective spy because you trust her with secrets that should never leave your lips. She's the one you confide in about your fears, your doubts, your desperate plans for survival, and she's the one who reports every word back to your enemies with the efficiency of a well-trained secretary. "I'm so worried about your Majesty," she'll say with perfect sincerity that would fool a saint, and you believe her because you want to believe someone cares about your well-being. But her worry isn't about your health. It's about whether you're becoming too unpredictable, too desperate, too dangerous to the established order that keeps her family in power and her purse full of silver. Your ladies also serve as a communication network for your enemies, carrying messages like medieval postal workers, arranging secret meetings, and coordinating the various plots against you with the efficiency of a military campaign. When your husband's advisors need to know your schedule, your ladies provide it with detailed precision. When foreign ambassadors want to gauge your political leanings, your ladies report back with comprehensive analysis. When your potential replacements need information about your vulnerabilities, your ladies are happy to oblige with the thoroughness of scholars writing dissertations. The competition among them is fierce because they know their own survival depends on backing the right horse in this deadly race. If you fall from favor, they need to be positioned with whoever comes next, their loyalty shifting like weather vanes in a storm. So they're constantly hedging their bets, maintaining relationships with your husband's mistresses, your political enemies, and anyone else who might hold power after you're gone. They also serve as your jailers in the most subtle way possible, always with you, always watching, always ready to report if you try to do anything unauthorized, like a prison guard disguised as a friend. Want to send a letter without supervision? Your ladies will offer to help, then make sure it gets intercepted by the right people. Want to meet with someone privately? Your ladies will insist on accompanying you for your own safety, of course. As your power fades, the vultures circle closer, and your ladies in waiting are often the first to sense the shift in the wind and adjust their loyalties accordingly, like sailors changing course before a storm. The servants avoid eye contact, the guards sharpen their swords, and somewhere in the back of your mind you realize that everyone knows something you're still pretending not to understand. There comes a moment in every doomed queen story when the pretense finally drops, when the careful political theatre gives way to open preparation for your removal, like actors abandoning their roles when the play is clearly over. You can feel it in the air like the approach of a thunderstorm, that electric tension that tells you everyone knows something you're still pretending not to understand. Their whispered conversations stopping when you enter rooms, their eyes avoiding yours like you're already a ghost haunting your own palace. It starts with small changes, subtle shifts that you might dismiss as coincidence if you weren't already paranoid from months of survival in this golden cage. Your favorite lady-in-waiting suddenly becomes unavailable for your morning routine, claiming illness that seems suspiciously convenient. The guard who usually nods respectfully when you pass now stares straight ahead as if you're invisible, his loyalty apparently purchased by someone who offers better terms than a doomed queen. The cook, who once took pride in preparing your meals, now sends up whatever's convenient with no regard for your preferences or dietary needs, his attention focused on pleasing whoever will be signing his pay vouchers next month. Your correspondence becomes suspiciously light, like a river running dry in summer. Letters that should be arriving from foreign courts, from your family, from political allies, they're either not coming or not reaching you through the careful filter of people who no longer consider you worth keeping informed. When you ask about them, your secretary gives vague answers about delays, lost messengers, or unspecified complications that sound increasingly like diplomatic lies. You begin to suspect that your mail is being intercepted, read, and filtered by people who no longer consider you a player in the game, just an obstacle to be managed until you can be removed. The invitations stop coming like a social drought that leaves you isolated and irrelevant. State dinners, court ceremonies, diplomatic receptions, events you would normally attend as a matter of course suddenly proceed without you, like a play continuing after the lead actor has been quietly replaced. When you inquire, you're told that your presence isn't required, that the king felt you might be too tired, that it would be better if you rested like an invalid being managed rather than a queen being consulted. The message is clear. You're being phased out of public life with the gentle efficiency of someone being eased into retirement. Your household staff begins to change like the cast of a play being rewritten. Long-time servants who knew your routines, your preferences, your secrets, they're quietly reassigned to other duties or simply disappear into the vast machinery of palace life. New faces appear, people who owe their positions to your enemies rather than to you, their loyalty purchased before they even meet you. They're polite but distant, professional but not personal, their service efficient but cold. They're not there to serve you, they're there to monitor you like guards disguised as servants, their real job to ensure you don't cause trouble during your final act. The financial pressure intensifies like a slow strangulation. Your allowance becomes irregular, your requests for funds are delayed or denied, and you're told that the royal treasury is experiencing temporary difficulties that somehow never affect your husband's mistresses, who seem to be acquiring new jewelry, new gowns, new apartments with surprising frequency. The money isn't gone, it's just not being spent on you anymore, redirected to people who have a future in this palace while you're being slowly starved of resources. Your children become increasingly distant, not from lack of love, but from political necessity that breaks your heart even as you understand its logic. They're being prepared for a world without you, coached on how to maintain their positions after your removal, their tutors teaching them that family loyalty is a luxury they can't afford. Your son, your heir, begins to speak of you in the past tense during public events, as if you're already gone, his words cutting deeper than any sword. But there's still time for one last desperate gambit, one final attempt to change the trajectory of your fate before the inevitable conclusion that everyone can see coming, except you're still fighting against it. Perhaps we could negotiate, you whisper to empty halls that echo with the ghosts of better days, your voice carrying the desperation of someone who's finally realized that everyone around you is either actively plotting your destruction or passively waiting for it to happen like spectators at a gladiator match where the outcome is predetermined. When you finally accept that everyone around you is either actively plotting your destruction or passively waiting for it to happen, desperation becomes your closest advisor and most trusted friend. You're no longer a queen making strategic decisions. You're a cornered animal trying every possible escape route, no matter how unlikely or undignified, your royal dignity sacrificed on the altar of survival. Your first instinct is to reach out to your family, the people who sold you into this marriage in the first place, like merchants disposing of valuable but inconvenient merchandise. Surely blood means something. Surely they won't abandon their own daughter to political assassination when push comes to shove. You write letters, increasingly frantic ones, begging for intervention, for sanctuary, for anything that might save your life from the slow-motion execution that's clearly being planned. The responses, when they come at all, are diplomatic masterpieces of saying nothing while sounding sympathetic, their words carefully crafted to avoid any commitment that might prove inconvenient later. Dearest daughter, your father writes with the warmth of a business contract. We are deeply concerned about your situation and are exploring all possible avenues of assistance. Translation: you're on your own, and we're already negotiating with your replacement to ensure our family's continued prosperity. Your family has calculated the cost of supporting you versus the benefits of abandoning you, and you've lost that equation decisively, like a merchant whose goods are no longer profitable. You try to build new alliances among the nobles who haven't yet declared for your enemies, offering favors like a desperate merchant at a failing market, promising future rewards that everyone knows you'll never be in a position to deliver, hinting at secret knowledge that could be valuable if anyone still considered you worth the risk. But these conversations feel like job interviews where everyone knows the position has already been filled, their polite attention masking the fact that they're already planning how to explain their association with you to whoever comes next. The nobles listen politely, make non-committal sounds, and then immediately report your desperate overtures to your husband's faction like students tattling to the teacher. Bribery becomes an option, though you have increasingly little to offer in a world where your political currency is rapidly devaluing. You start giving away your jewelry, your personal possessions, anything of value that might buy you temporary loyalty or useful information, like a gambler betting their last coins on a rigged game. Your ladies-in-waiting accept these gifts with gracious smiles and continue reporting your every move to their real employers with the efficiency of professional spies. You're essentially paying people to spy on you more effectively, funding your own surveillance network with the desperation of someone who has no other options. You consider trying to seduce your way back into your husband's good graces, though the thought makes your skin crawl like insects under silk. You attempt to rekindle whatever attraction once existed between you, to remind him of better times, to appeal to any remaining affection he might harbor like a musician playing a broken instrument and hoping for melody. But your husband looks at you like you're a piece of furniture he's planning to replace, politely interested in your condition but fundamentally unengaged with your continued existence, his attention already focused on younger, more politically useful options. Religious appeals become another desperate strategy in your dwindling arsenal. You increase your charitable giving, your church attendance, your public displays of piety like an actor overplaying their role. If you can't save yourself through politics, perhaps you can shame your enemies through moral superiority. Though even you know this is a long shot. You donate to monasteries, fund religious art, and make very public pilgrimages to holy sites while everyone watches with the patience of people waiting for a performance to end. The priests accept your gifts and pray for your soul while quietly preparing for your funeral, their prayers feeling more like last rites than intercessions. When all else fails, there's always the trial, that final theatrical performance where justice and politics dance together in a carefully choreographed execution disguised as legal proceedings. Like Judge Judy, but the verdict is death, and the bailiff carries an axe. When all your desperate survival attempts have failed and your enemies have finally decided it's time to make your removal official, you get the medieval equivalent of due process, a trial that's about as fair as a coin toss where both sides are heads and you're the coin being flipped into a volcano while everyone applauds. The charges against you are a masterpiece of creative writing, each accusation carefully crafted to ensure maximum political impact with minimum factual basis. Adultery, naturally, because every inconvenient queen must be sexually immoral. It's practically written into the job description. Treason, because questioning your husband's decisions is apparently the same as betraying the realm to foreign invaders. Witchcraft, because your foreign birth and ability to read make you inherently suspicious, like a medieval security threat with a library card. The evidence will show, the prosecutor announces with the confidence of a man who's never met a fact he couldn't twist into a pretzel, that the accused queen has consorted with enemies of the realm, practiced dark arts, and violated the sacred bonds of marriage. The evidence, of course, consists mainly of servants who've been paid to lie with the enthusiasm of actors auditioning for their lives, letters that have been creatively interpreted by people who think metaphor is a type of foreign conspiracy, and witnesses who swear they saw you levitating when you were probably just standing on a stool to reach something. The courtroom itself is a theatre of predetermined outcomes, its stone walls echoing with the sound of justice being slowly strangled by politics. Tapestries depicting biblical scenes of judgment hang on the walls. Solomon's wisdom, Daniel's trial, Christ before Pilate, and you're starting to think the decorator had a very specific sense of irony about your situation. The trial itself is pure theatre, complete with dramatic gestures, flowery speeches, and an audience that already knows how the play ends. You're allowed to speak in your own defense, but every word you say is twisted into further proof of your guilt, like a verbal game of chess where your opponent gets to move your pieces. Deny the charges? You're clearly lying with the desperation of someone caught red-handed. Admit to minor infractions? You're obviously hiding worse crimes, probably involving Satan and foreign gold. Remain silent? Your silence is clearly an admission of guilt, because innocent people never shut up, apparently. Your accusers parade through the courtroom like actors in a very expensive play where everyone's competing for the most dramatic performance. Your former ladies-in-waiting, now dressed in their finest gowns and looking appropriately sorrowful, testify about your strange behaviors and suspicious conversations with the gravity of people describing the apocalypse. They speak of how you would stare out windows for long periods, clearly communing with evil spirits, when you were actually just trying to get a moment of peace from their constant chatter. They describe your foreign prayers as incantations, and your letters home as coded communications with enemy agents, their voices trembling with the kind of fear that comes from knowing their own survival depends on your destruction. The court physicians present their medical evidence with the gravity of men who've discovered the cure for death itself. They describe your unnatural pallor and suspicious symptoms that clearly indicate demonic possession or foreign poison. Their diagnosis delivered with the confidence of people who think bloodletting cures everything. The fact that you look pale because you've been under constant stress and barely sleeping is irrelevant. Medical science has spoken, and medical science says you're guilty of being unhealthy in a suspicious manner. Foreign correspondence is presented as evidence of your treasonous activities, each letter examined like a military document. Letters to your family asking for help are reframed as secret communications with enemy agents plotting invasion. Your requests for financial support become evidence of your attempts to fund a rebellion against your loving husband. Even your complaints about the weather are interpreted as coded messages about your dissatisfaction with the realm, because apparently even meteorology is political when you're a doomed queen. The religious authorities weigh in with their own brand of spiritual jurisprudence, their robes rustling with the authority of men who speak directly to God. They've discovered that you once questioned whether burning people alive was really what Jesus had in mind when he preached about love and forgiveness, which clearly indicates heretical thinking that threatens the very foundations of Christian society. The judges, handpicked by your husband and his advisors, listen to all this evidence with the solemn attention of men who are being paid very well to reach a specific conclusion. They nod gravely at each accusation, furrow their brows at each piece of evidence, and occasionally ask probing questions that somehow always make you look worse. Their judicial wisdom guided by the kind of legal reasoning that starts with the verdict and works backward to the evidence. The verdict is predetermined, but the judges still retire to deliberate, probably to enjoy a nice meal and discuss how convincingly they should look when they return with their decision that everyone already knows. You have 3 days to make peace with God and your enemies, though frankly your enemies seem to be winning the popularity contest. The sentence has been passed, the date has been set, and now comes the strangest part of your entire royal nightmare. Preparing for your own death with the kind of meticulous planning usually reserved for state dinners or military campaigns. Except this time you're both the guest of honor and the main course. Your final accommodations are a step down from your usual royal quarters, which is saying something considering your usual quarters were already a gilded prison. The tower cell is stone, cold, and furnished with the bare minimum. A bed that's more suggestion than furniture, a chair that wobbles like your faith in humanity, a table that's seen better centuries, and a chamber pot that someone will empty exactly once before your execution, because apparently even condemned queens don't deserve fresh waste management. The walls are thick enough to muffle screams, but thin enough that you can hear the construction of your scaffold outside, the sound of hammering and sawing providing a constant reminder of your approaching appointment with eternity. It's like listening to someone build your own coffin, except more public and with significantly more splinters. The first visitors are the priests, because apparently dying requires a lot of paperwork with the Almighty, their robes rustling with the importance of men who hold the keys to salvation. They arrive with their Bibles, their holy oils, and their carefully practiced expressions of spiritual concern that somehow manage to look both compassionate and calculating. Your Majesty must prepare her soul for judgment, they intone with the gravity of men who've never actually met God but are confident about his opinions, as if you haven't been thinking about little else since your arrest. They want you to confess your sins, repent your crimes, and ideally provide a nice statement about how just and merciful your husband has been throughout this entire process, because apparently even your final confession needs to serve his political interests. Perhaps your Majesty would like to write letters, suggests your keeper, a man whose job description apparently includes death concierge and professional mourning coordinator. You're allowed to write to your children, your family, and anyone else you'd like to say goodbye to, with the understanding that every word will be read, copied, and possibly edited before delivery, like a medieval content moderation system run by people who think love letters are potential security threats. Your final letters become political documents, carefully crafted to avoid giving your enemies any posthumous ammunition, while still expressing the kind of maternal love that won't get your children executed for having treasonous feelings. Writing to your children is particularly heartbreaking, like trying to explain quantum physics to someone who's never seen numbers. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that mommy is going to be executed for treason without making it sound like bedtime story gone horribly wrong? How do you tell your daughter that she should be careful not to end up like you without giving her a complex about marriage, politics, and the general untrustworthiness of men in crowns? Your wardrobe for the execution becomes a matter of intense discussion among people who apparently have strong opinions about appropriate death attire. You're allowed to choose your final outfit, but even this simple decision is fraught with political implications that would make a diplomat weep. Wear black, and you're mourning your own death, which might seem like self-pity. Wear white and you're claiming innocence, which contradicts the court's verdict. Wear your royal colours and you're being defiant, which might inspire copycat rebellions. The meals during your final days are surprisingly good, as if the kitchen staff feels guilty about your impending death and wants to make amends through superior cooking, their conscience apparently expressing itself through better seasoning and more tender meat. You eat with the knowledge that each bite might be your last, which gives even simple bread and wine a strange poignancy that makes you wonder if this is how communion is supposed to feel. Sleep becomes elusive, like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Every sound in the night could be your executioner arriving early, every footstep in the corridor a harbinger of dawn that you're not ready to face. You lie awake staring at the stone ceiling, thinking about your life, your mistakes, your children, and the strange turns of fate that brought you from a hopeful young bride to a condemned traitor in a tower cell that smells faintly of despair and old prayers. On your final night, you're allowed to pray alone, to make your peace with whatever gods might be listening to the desperate whispers of doomed queens. Tomorrow, you'll walk out of this cell for the last time, but tonight, you're still alive, still thinking, still hoping that somehow history will remember you as more than just another inconvenient queen who got in the way of powerful men. The scaffold awaits, and so does history's judgment, though frankly, history has already made up its mind, and it's not particularly flattering. Dawn breaks over the execution ground with the kind of crisp, clear light that seems inappropriate for such a dark occasion. Like nature itself hasn't read the memo about today's entertainment schedule. You wake not to servants bringing breakfast, but to the sound of crowds gathering outside. Their voices a low murmur of anticipation that grows louder as the morning progresses, like a medieval stadium filling up for the main event. This isn't just your execution, it's the social event of the season, complete with vendors selling meat pies and children getting lifted onto shoulders for a better view of your final moments. Your final preparations are conducted with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed play, where everyone knows their lines except you're still improvising your way through the final act. The priests arrive early for final rites, their faces grave, but their movements practiced with the smooth efficiency of people who've done this before and know the routine. Last confession, final prayers, and a blessing that's supposed to ease your passage into whatever comes next. Your Majesty, the Tower Constable announces with the formality of someone announcing dinner rather than death. It is time. The words hang in the air like a death sentence, which they literally are. You stand, smooth your skirts with hands that shake only slightly, and check your appearance one final time in the small mirror they've provided, because apparently even condemned queens deserve to look presentable for their own murder. The walk to the scaffold is a carefully choreographed procession that feels like a wedding march played in a minor key. You're escorted by guards whose job is to ensure you don't make a run for it, followed by priests whose job is to ensure your soul doesn't make a run for it, and surrounded by officials who want to be seen participating in this moment of justice, like politicians at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The crowd parts as you approach, and you can feel thousands of eyes watching your every step with the intensity of people who've paid good money for front-row seats to history. Some faces show sympathy, others curiosity, and a few display the kind of bloodthirsty excitement that public executions always seem to attract. Their expressions ranging from pity to entertainment to the kind of morbid fascination that makes people slow down at carriage accidents. The scaffold itself is a simple wooden platform, raised high enough that everyone in the crowd can see the proceedings like a medieval theatre stage, where the final act is always a tragedy. It's been draped in black cloth that flutters in the morning breeze, and a block has been positioned in the center, worn smooth by previous executions like a piece of furniture that's seen too much use. Your executioner waits nearby, his face hidden behind a black hood that makes him look like death's personal assistant, his axe gleaming in the morning sun with the kind of professional polish that suggests he takes pride in his work. He's a professional chosen for his skill and reliability rather than his personality, because apparently even royal executions have quality control standards. "Any last words, Your Majesty?" the executioner asks with the professional courtesy of someone who's done this before and knows the importance of good customer service. And you realize this is your final chance to control the narrative that will outlive your body by several centuries. Some queens have used this moment for defiant speeches that would be quoted for centuries, others for religious proclamations that painted them as martyrs, and a few for spectacular curses that would haunt their executioners for years to come, like medieval performance art with permanent consequences. The crowd listens in respectful silence, hanging on every word like scholars studying ancient texts. This is theatre, and they know they're witnessing history in the making, your execution serving as both entertainment and political statement, a warning to other potential troublemakers wrapped in the pageantry of royal protocol. The axe falls with a sound like thunder, and your story ends where so many royal stories end, in blood, in spectacle, and in the service of men who will sleep peacefully tonight, knowing they've solved their problems with violence disguised as justice. And somehow they called this a fairy tale ending, though the only thing magical about it was how quickly your husband found a replacement. So, how was your day as a medieval queen? You've woken up in a golden prison, discovered that your husband has the legal right to kill you, spent your morning calculating which servants are spying on you, navigated the treacherous waters of court politics where everyone smiles while sharpening knives, survived multiple assassination attempts disguised as medical treatments, watched your own family abandon you for political convenience like rats fleeing a sinking ship, and ended up with your head on a chopping block while crowds cheered like it was a particularly entertaining sporting event. Congratulations, you've experienced the true reality of royal marriage in the Middle Ages, where "till death do us part" was less a romantic promise and more a practical timeline. But let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have made it past the wedding night, because the romantic image of medieval queenship that Disney sold you is about as accurate as a map drawn by someone who's never left their village. The truth is that medieval queenship was a death sentence with better jewelry and more elaborate funeral arrangements. You weren't a partner in marriage, you were a political asset with an expiration date clearly marked on your forehead, your value measured entirely by your ability to produce male heirs, maintain useful alliances, and avoid causing inconvenience to the men who owned you like expensive livestock. The system was designed to eliminate you with the efficiency of a well-oiled execution machine. Your husband could legally kill you for adultery, real or imagined, with the blessing of both church and state. Your family would abandon you the moment supporting you became politically costly, their love conditional on your continued usefulness. Your children would be turned against you to secure their own survival, learning early that family loyalty is a luxury they can't afford. Your servants were spies whose loyalty was purchased before they even met you. Their real job to monitor your every move and report back to whoever paid them best. Your friends were competitors in a deadly game where there could be only one winner, and your allies were fair-weather supporters who would switch sides the moment the wind changed direction like weather vanes in a political storm. Yet somehow, through all of this institutional misogyny and political brutality disguised as divine order, some queens managed to survive and even thrive. They did it through a combination of cunning, luck, and the ability to make themselves indispensable while never appearing threatening, walking a tightrope between power and powerlessness with the grace of professional acrobats. They played the game better than the men who created it, using the very system designed to destroy them as a weapon for their own survival, turning their supposed weakness into strength and their vulnerability into armor. But for every Catherine of Aragon who fought for her rights, there was an Anne Boleyn who lost her head to political convenience. For every Eleanor of Aquitaine who wielded real power, there were countless unnamed queens who disappeared into history's footnotes, remembered only as cautionary tales about what happens to women who inconvenience powerful men. The legacy of medieval queenship is written in blood, betrayal, and the quiet desperation of women who understood that their survival depended on pleasing men who could legally murder them for any reason or no reason at all. They lived in golden cages that were still cages, wore crowns that were also targets, and smiled graciously while calculating the odds of surviving another day in a world designed to kill them for political convenience. The next time you read a fairy tale about a beautiful princess marrying a handsome prince and living happily ever after, remember the real queens of medieval Europe. They were political prisoners in silk gowns, breeding stock with royal titles, and sacrificial lambs dressed up as symbols of power, their stories serving as horror tales with better costumes and more elaborate sets. So could you survive a day as a medieval queen? Probably not, but maybe, just maybe, you'd find a way to make your death matter, to leave behind a legacy that would outlast the men who killed you. And perhaps that's the most human thing of all, the determination to find meaning and dignity, even in the face of systematic oppression and inevitable death, to create something beautiful, even when your own life is being destroyed by the very people who claim to love you. Welcome to medieval royalty, where even the crown comes with a target, and the only happy ending is surviving long enough to die of natural causes in a world designed to kill you for political convenience, one betrayal at a time.